All right. So ongoing with just recording something, I don't know, I called white noise, or just doing something different that's not necessarily part of the podcast, whether it's including field recordings or not. I thought I came up with this idea too. So back in the day, in November of 2004, took a trip to Mexico. My father had died earlier that year, and we needed to go just tie some loose ends that were happening in Mexico, along with just the much needed, well, I'd hate to say vacation, but that's more or less what it is. It's a vacation not from a job or anything like that. It's just overall from the lot of emotions that we're going through at that time. And while I went with my mom, and she was taking care of some business in her hometown, and my uncles were doing their thing. I decided to take advantage of the situation and engage on a tour of the Yucatan Peninsula. I more or less started with a trip um, in Palenque, stayed a day there, and went to the ruins. And then I just went up the coast and hit Tulum for a little bit, which is what I want to talk about today. Then I went to Cancun, went to Chichen Itza, stayed in Merida for a couple of days, and ended up catching the bus back to Veracruz. It was I did it by myself. It was a pretty cool trip. I met some interesting people there along the way, and it was very chill, very relaxed. It was in November, so down there it was just perfect weather the whole time down there. And it's a trip that I wish I could do again. There are a lot of beautiful ruins that I went to that are still, at that time, were not overrun by tourists. At this point, Chichen Itza is already a wonder of the world or what have you. And by the time I got to Chichen Itza, it's really crazy. There's too many people there to really kind of soak in the power or the energy, or just maybe just the overall feeling of awe of how amazing these structures are. When I started off on the southern side of the peninsula, southern eastern-ish side, there's Hormiguero, Chipujil, Chicana, Belum. And these sites are, for the most part, intact. And at this point, Calakmul was just more or less being opened up to, as I understand it, to the public. When I went to Calakmul, there was no one there. I was the only one on the premises. I got there super early in the morning. And I don't know what kind of attraction it is now, but it was pretty amazing. There's still, I don't know if they're now, but at that time there were howler monkeys up in the trees. You can hear them. Big old pheasant birds walking around. I mean, huge fucking birds. The kind of birds that can do you some harm. And it was a very magical place. And I went there, went up the coast, and then I ended up in Tulum. And these are the images that I got on a slide. I took slide film. Most of these images, all of these images are on film, whether it was black and white, negative, black and white positive film, color negative, and color positive film. I really took a lot of photographs, and I'm glad I did. As I'm looking through them, and mind you, this is 16 years later that I'm looking at these photographs. I find more and more things in them to where I pretty much really appreciate the photographer that I was at that time. And it's not that I was even remotely as technically savvy as I am now, and in both the camera gear and the use of film that I've had. For the most part, I was just a snapshot shooter. Oh, but I had a feeling, and I think this is what I tried to capture at the time, and I'm really glad that I took my camera and that I at least pretended to be a photographer, out doing more than just taking snapshot pictures and trying to actually shoot for a vibe more than a location or more than a snapshot or more than hey, this is my vacation photos of what I'm, of when I went to Tulum and what have you. I try to do a little bit more justice to it. And of course now, hindsight being 2020, I would go back and, oh, this is what I would do. This is how I would engage people. And with the knowing now all these skills that I've acquired in the past 16 years, it would be a lot more mixture of audio and doing more of a vlog thing, taking some videos, but really going down there with a camera. I think I'd still shoot film, but really going down there and start to shoot a little differently and try to capture more of the vibe of the setting than what I originally had. But I do look. I'm looking through these images of Tulum on this slideshow. I must say I am very proud of myself as to how good a job I did just to at least do what might be the minimum amount of work to try to achieve a point, to try to get to a point, not to something more than a snapshot, but not exactly a really documentary style or artistic style thing. What I think what it amounts to is you're better than average snapshots. I did try to portray some sort of mystical feeling of what it may have been like. I don't know, at some point. It's hard to express that as an adult going to these places that are ruins that have been there centuries before you even set foot or before you even were alive. How emotional and spiritual it is to just be in awe of these great constructs of things. It's like I wish I knew more about the history of these people than I already do, or that I do, or that anyone does. Why are they here? Why did they live here? And of course, the whole, the mysterious thing of why did they leave? And of course, there are a lot of theories as to why, the civilization declined right up until the point of the conquistadors arriving. But one of the things that really struck me here, and I remember thinking this specifically as I took these photographs, is that I think I'm very married to black and white film. I love black and white film, and I knew that going in, and that's something that hasn't changed since 2004. But I knew that at some point when I got to the tropical regions or the beach regions like Tulum and some of the other places that are really rich in color, I thought for a second that, you know what, it would be a crime if I didn't shoot something in color just to show how blue and colorful these places are, even though that they are basically dead cities, and how still amazing these places are to be witnessed in color, if not for just a quick second to let people know that these places aren't abstract, that they're real and that you can go see. When you go to the big pyramid of the sun in Tenochtitlan, just outside of Mexico City, they still have a tour where they still have the paintings up, and they are amazing. And those are they don't allow pictures in their flash photography of any kind in there anymore. But they are very amazing to see, and I recommend anybody that wants to take a trip to go down there. As I look at these pictures, and I've made these comments before in the past, as far as traveling goes, you'd think I'd be, as far as being a photographer, and let me just pause. Oops, sorry. I had to go check on my pizza. Yes, so that's how these recordings are going to go. They're going to be very, very raw and off the cuff there. Not too big production going into these. But anyway, as I was saying, is like, as being a photographer, you'd think I'd be like, oh, I want to travel the world. I want to experience new places and things like that. To photograph the Taj Mahal or, the Greek Roman ruins or anything like that. And to be honest, I really don't have any aspirations to travel the world like that. I don't have a big calling to that. I don't want to go to Europe. There's a couple of places I'd go to Europe. I don't really feel like traveling much places. Maybe the only places I'd like to go is places like Africa. But I definitely want to go real deep into Mexico and into more into the jungle, maybe in Guatemala and such, and look at these ruins and just soak in the energy of these places that once were, that once thrived and were full of people, full of life, full of an economy, full of just the whole civilization that existed long before Cortez ever set foot, and that existed on par with these great cities that were starting to sprout up during the Dark Ages in Europe. It's people forget that these places were thriving, as some cities were on the downfall. So I'm just I just started doing my archive here with these photographs. And archiving my entire project. I have almost 4,000 photographs that I took from that Mexico trip, and all on film. And about a year and a half ago, I finally scanned all the photographs into the computer. And now that I finally have the tools at my disposal to properly at least mass or batch process these and give them the proper color and individual attention that they need, I am finally just going through them again and then just sort of more or less reliving what happened during these times. And man, it's nice to see. And if photography gives me anything, it's just at the very basic level is the ability to go back in time and just remember these photographs that I made during an otherwise really, really weird time in my life. All right. So I'm going to put these up. I am going to make a little YouTube video on these things and along with the audio of the white noise program that goes on my blog. So I'll post, of course, the video on there as well. Thank you so much for tuning in and listen to me ramble about old age, but I think I might actually keep doing these as far as each roll of film I'm going to process. I'm not going to do too much editing. I'm just basically going to look at my rolls of film and go through each roll, and for the most part, post up each roll and show the good, the bad, and the ugly just because, well, fuck it, I can. The intent was of course, to have an art show once upon a time. And as time passes and digital comes of age and film started to fade away, and all of a sudden I couldn't manually print, or it wasn't feasible to have handmade prints of the black and white pictures, and it was better to print this way or the other And of course, Eggleston, I couldn't get my C-type print as the way I wanted to. Not that I'm anywhere near that level, but all that jazz kind of started to fade away as digital more and more started to take over. And within the past 6 years, probably more like 5 years, there's this big calling again, this resurgence to, again, I've been shooting a lot more film. And actually, I'm on the verge of setting up my darkroom and making handmade prints again. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you soon. Enjoy your youth.